In this example, we want to find the measure of the missing angle. So if we look at part A, we have ourselves a triangle. We know that all the interior angles, or the angles of the triangle, must add up to 180 degrees. So what we can do is we can add 65 and 57 if you want and take that away from 180, or take 65 away from 180 and then 57 away from 180. So we'll have 180 degrees minus, and then this is going to be 65 and 57, which should be, I believe, 122. So if that's true, then all we need to do is subtract 122 from 180, and that would give us 58 degrees. You could double check your work. You could add these up. 58 and 57 is 115, and 115 is 65. And if you're having trouble with that math mentally or on paper, and you're allowed to use a calculator, then you can use a calculator. Now for part B, we have to know what some symbols mean, or what a symbol means. So this little angle right here symbol, that means that this angle is a right angle. So we know that this angle measure then would be 90 degrees. So we're wondering, what is this other angle? There's a couple different ways to see this. We can do this with our triangle sum theorem. And that would state that we need to take 180 degrees and subtract 90 and 40 together, which is 130. That gives us 50. Also, another way to think about this is in a right angle. Because this angle is always in a right triangle, this angle is 90 degrees, and so the other two must add up to 90. In other words, they're complementary. So in a right triangle, the other two angles that aren't the right angle, those are complementary. So we could say, hey, what angle plus 40 is 90, and that's 50. So that's just another way to take a look at this. Now in part C over here, what we want to do is we want to take a look at what we know and make the next logical conclusion, and then we'll eventually get over to this angle over here. You'll notice that we can't make any conclusions about that angle right away. In other words, we need to figure out this angle first, and then we could conclude that those two are congruent, so they would actually have the same angle measure because those are vertical angles. So let's try to figure out what this angle is here, and we will find the other missing angle. So we know that 30 and 20 is 50, so we could take 180 and subtract 50, and that leaves 130 degrees for this angle. We're only looking at this triangle. It's a good idea just to focus on one shape and to see what you can logically conclude in the diagram. Now we know that these two are vertical angles, so the question mark angle must also be 130. And we have a few more here to do. We've got D and E and F and G, and maybe even an H in there, so we'll check this out. These are wonderful questions that involve you thinking about the problem and breaking it down into smaller pieces and making logical conclusions. We're going to need to do that for this one. For this one, really can't figure out anything about this triangle. I do know that these two angles are congruent here. They're vertical angles. And we can actually figure out this angle. So let's just try to figure out this angle. 20 and 40 is 60, so we're going to take 180 and subtract 60, and that's going to be 120. So this angle here is 120. Now this angle must be 120, and then we can actually figure this angle out now. So again, sometimes it's not very apparent exactly what this angle is, but if you can make logical conclusions and link these steps together, then you can actually sometimes find the measure of the angle that you want. Now we know for this little triangle here that 120 and 39 is 159. So this is a different part of this problem, and all we're going to need to do is subtract that from 180, and that gives us 21 degrees. So this angle here, this question mark, must be 21 degrees. In example E here, we're wondering what this angle is. We actually can't use our triangle sum theorem here to figure out these two. So let's look elsewhere. Not much going on with this 102 degrees. It's just kind of there. But this 137 here, it forms a straight line. So it's so the straight line, they form a straight angle together. and they're supplementary. They're a linear pair actually. So 137 and that angle must add to 180, or we can just take 180 and subtract 137 to find this, the measure of this angle right here. So 180 minus 137, that would be 43 degrees. So we've got 43 degrees right here. Now that we figured out this angle, we can figure out this other angle right here, and I'll use different tick mark or different angle marks because I think it's going to be different. We'll see if it is or not. So we can take 180 degrees and subtract 145 degrees, and that would be 35 degrees. So the measure of this angle must be 35. Now to figure out the measure of this angle, we're going to have to use some different marks here. 3 of them, I think. And by the way, that's not necessary if you already know the angle measures. If you just have one angle mark and you have different angle measures there, then they're different. But we don't know what this one is yet. So we know that they do form a straight line. They're a linear pair, and so they're supplementary. So we could do 180 degrees minus 35 degrees, and that would be 145 degrees for the question mark. So a few different steps here. We had to do our supplementary angles here. We had to do our triangle interior angle sum theorem here. And then we had to do the linear pair here. Alright, we'll move on to F and G. Get this stacked up here, looking just right for you. Alright, and here we have a complicated figure. We want to know this angle. And we could figure this angle out if we knew this one, and we could figure this one out if we knew this one, and we actually can figure this angle out. So let's try to figure this angle out right here. Well, we know that in a triangle, we could subtract from 180 the other two angles, and so those other two angles together are 125 degrees. And this is going to be 55 degrees. So the measure of this angle is 55 degrees. Now, these are not a linear pair. There's 3 of them, but if we look at 55, 50, and this angle right here, they all must add up to 180. So what we could do is we could take 180 and subtract 55 and 50, which is 105 degrees, giving us 75 degrees. So the only angle measure that's possible for this angle here is 75 degrees. Now we could take 180 degrees and subtract 75 and 35 to get this other angle, because those are 3 angles of a triangle. So 75 and 35 is 110, and that would be 70 degrees. So the measure of this angle here in question mark is 70 degrees. In this example, question mark, we don't know this angle, so we can't figure it out right away. If we knew this angle, though, we know that these 2 angles here and here are going to be complementary, and we can actually figure this angle out right now. If we look at this triangle, we know that we could add 84 and 36 and take that away from 180. So 84 and 36 is 120 degrees. So the measure of this angle would be 60. And what angle added to 60 would be a right angle, or 90 degrees, and that would be 30 degrees. Then we can use our triangle sum theorem here, that the interior angles add up to 180. We could take 180 and subtract 86 and 30. So 86 and 30 is 116. And then utilizing 180 minus 116, that would give us 64 degrees. So the measure of this angle has got to be 64 degrees. Alright, just one more here with this wonderful example. Nice long example. If you need to see one of these, just hopefully you can select that in the video. This one, we want to find this question mark angle. And we need to know this angle, but to find this angle, we need to know this angle. To find this angle, we need to know that angle. And to find this angle, we'd want to know this one and this one. So let's look at 45 and 75, and hopefully we can make some conclusions about these 2 angles here. Well, 75 degrees in this angle, those are vertical angles, and so they're congruent. So that angle must be 75. We're in luck here because 45 and this angle, those are vertical angles, so they must be congruent. That's going to allow us to figure out this angle here. So 45 and 75 degrees, that's 120. And we're going to subtract that from 180, giving us 60 degrees. Now we know that 60, 79, and this angle here, those together are going to form a straight line, so they must be all supplementary. Now supplementary is usually only used for two angles, but we could say this, that these three angles would add up to 180. So we could take 180 and subtract 60 and 79, which is 139, and that would be 41 degrees. So the measure of this angle must be 41. If we add all these up, we get 180. And now we can use our interior angles of a triangle theorem here to state that 180 degrees minus 68 and 41 is 109 must be the third angle here. All three angles must add up to 180. So we've got 71 for that one. And then this angle here, the question mark angle, and 71, those are supplementary. They form a linear pair. Right here they form a straight angle. So we could do 180 degrees minus 71, and that's 109. So the measure of this angle finally is 109 degrees.